A man is set to return to court for a disturbing case of child abuse in Duluth later this month. 37-year-old Nathaniel Matthews of Duluth is being charged with 5 felony counts of criminal sexual conduct of a child. According to court documents, Matthews knew the victims. The criminal complaint says the 2 victims were 4 and 5 years old when the abuse occurred. Well, 10 years later, the victims came forward. This delayed disclosure is something that occurs 90% of the time, according to First Witness Child Advocacy Center. Northern News Now's Madison Green spoke with them today to understand the role the organization plays in child abuse cases.
A critical step in all of these child abuse cases is first talking to the child to understand what happened and then providing resources for healing, all of which happen at the First Witness Child Advocacy Center.
So this is our place where children come.
First Witness in Duluth conducted the forensics interview with the 2 victims in the case against Nathaniel Matthews.
It's designed to help the child feel comfortable in talking. There are things that help them feel like this is a space for them.
In 2024, First Witness conducted about 250 interviews, a 25% increase from previous years. A Trend Executive Director Tracy Klana says they are seeing.
That may represent an increase in reporting, and it may represent an increase in child abuse. We just really don't know.
Gracie Getchell is the Prevention Education Coordinator.
So we talk to kids about how to stay safe, about safe and unsafe touches, what to do if abuse ever happens, and how to keep their bodies safe.
And teach adults what signs of abuse to look for.
If they see a change in that child's behavior, it may be time to reach out. If the child shares something, then it's a clear sign that a report needs to be made.
Because Getchell says most children wait at least 6 months to open up, either out of fear or out of love for their abuser.
It's not the adult's job to determine if that abuse is happening. It's just their job to listen and listen with support.
If you suspect child abuse, First Witness encourages reaching out to your local law enforcement, but if there's an immediate need for safety, to call 911. In Duluth, Madison Green, Northern News Now.
Thank you, Madison. According to the St. Louis County Attorney's Office, child abuse cases may be the most difficult cases to prosecute, especially in situations like this when so much time has passed between when the alleged crime occurred. The County Attorney's Office says a later reporting date likely means there is no medical evidence. Child abuse cases in general lack eyewitnesses because most of the time their abuser is someone known to them. This means the victim's testimony is paramount in prosecuting. The legal team will try and corroborate any detail of their statement. Now, the attorney's office put it this way: when prosecuting a child abuse case, think of a pyramid. They say the base is the number of abuse cases that occur, and the very tip of the pyramid is the number that actually result in a guilty verdict.